A little old lady went to the grocery store to buy cat food. She picked up 4 cans and headed to the checkout counter. The cashier looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, but we can't sell you cat food without proof that you actually have a cat. Management says some elderly people buy it to eat, so we need to make sure it's for your pet." Frustrated, the little old lady went home, grabbed her cat, and brought it back to the store. Satisfied, the cashier sold her the cat food. The next day, she returned to buy 2 cans of dog food. Again, the cashier stopped her. "I'm sorry, but we can't sell you dog food without proof that you have a dog. Management has the same concerns about dog food." Annoyed but determined, the little old lady went home, brought her dog back to the store, and was finally allowed to buy the dog food. On the 3rd day, she came back carrying a small box with a hole in the lid. She approached the same cashier and said, "Stick your finger in this hole." The cashier hesitated. "No way. What if there's a snake or something dangerous in there?" The little old lady reassured her. "I promise, there's nothing in this box that can hurt you." Reluctantly, the cashier stuck her finger into the hole, then quickly pulled it back out, wrinkling her nose. "That smells like crap," she exclaimed. The little old lady smiled. "It is. Now, I'd like to buy 3 rolls of toilet paper." Moral of the story, don't mess with old people. A little girl goes into a pet shop and asks, "Excuse me, do you have any whittle wabbits?" The shopkeeper's heart melts. He kneels down to her level and says, "Do you want a whittle white wabbit, or a soft, fluffy black wabbit? Or maybe that whittle brown one over there?" The little girl blushes, rocks back on her heels, puts her hands on her knees, leans forward and whispers, "I don't really think my pet anaconda gives a flying f**k." A woman was sitting at a bar enjoying an after-work cocktail with her girlfriends when an exceptionally tall, handsome, extremely sexy young man walked in. He was so striking she couldn't take her eyes off him. The young man noticed her stare and walked straight over. Before she could apologize for being rude, he said, "I'll do anything. Absolutely anything you want me to do, no matter how kinky, for $100 on one condition." Flabbergasted, the woman asked what the condition was. He replied, "You have to tell me what you want me to do in just 3 words." She thought for just a moment, smiled a naughty grin, reached into her purse, slowly counted out 5 $20 bills, pressed them into his hand along with her address, looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Clean my bathroom." A cowboy rode into town and decided to stop in front of the local saloon for a drink. As it often went in these parts, the locals had a habit of giving strangers a hard time. When he finished his drink, he stepped outside to find that his horse had vanished. Without a second thought, he strode back into the saloon, twirled his gun in the air with ease, and caught it effortlessly above his head, firing a shot into the ceiling. "All right, which one of you low-down varmints took my horse?" he bellowed, his voice calm but carrying a dangerous edge. The room fell silent. No one said a word. He took a slow sip from his beer, then looked around the room with a steely gaze. "I'm going to have one more drink," he said. "And if my horse isn't back out there by the time I finish, I'm going to do what I had to do in Texas. And believe me, I don't like doing what I had to do in Texas." The locals shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between each other. The cowboy finished his beer in silence, then strolled out of the bar. To his surprise, his horse was waiting for him by the hitching post, as if nothing had ever happened. He saddled up, gave the crowd one last look, and started to ride out of town. As he was leaving, the bartender walked out to ask, "Hey, partner, before you head out, what exactly did you have to do in Texas?" The cowboy turned in his saddle, a slight grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I had to walk home," he said with a wink. A blonde arrived for her first golf lesson, and the pro asked her to take a swing at a ball to see how she'd do. The blonde did so and completely muffed the shot. The pro said, "Your swing is good, but you're gripping the club too hard. Grip the club gently as you would your husband's weapon." The blonde took another shot and drove the ball 275 yards straight down the fairway. The pro said, "That was excellent. Let's try it again. Only this time, take the club out of your mouth. A man and a woman who had never met before found themselves assigned to the same sleeping room on a transcontinental train. Though initially embarrassed and uneasy over sharing a room, they were both very tired and fell asleep quickly, he in the upper bunk and she in the lower. At 1 a.m., the man leaned down and gently woke the woman, saying, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you, but would you be willing to reach into the closet to get me a second blanket? I'm awfully cold." "I have a better idea," she replied. "Just for tonight, let's pretend we're married." "Wow, that's a great idea," he exclaimed. "Good," she replied. "Get your own f***ing blanket." After a moment of silence, he farted. Two old farmers, Joe and Bob, lived as neighbors but didn't like each other much. In 1999, there was a period of minus 30 degrees centigrade cold, and Bob and Joe had nothing to do because of it. So they bet a bottle of vodka on who can sit out on the window ledge the longest with a bare ass. After 2 hours, Bob's wife came home and asked Bob, "What are you doing?" Bob explained, and she said, "Come on, you will only freeze your ass off." Bob refused, as he wanted to win the bet. Then his wife got an idea. "Let's change places when Joe is looking the other way." Bob's wife put on the same kind of pullover and cap and traded places with Bob. Half an hour later, Joe's wife came home and asked him, "What are you doing?" Joe told her and said, "I am determined to win the bottle." "You are crazy. Come on in." "Certainly not. I am already on the winning side. Bob lost his balls half an hour ago." Received a call from a female recruitment consultant. She said to me, "Sir, I have 2 openings for you." I replied, "Yes." I know there was a long silence, and then she said, "Asshole." I replied, "I prefer the other one." A man suspected his young wife of being too friendly with another man, so he hired a famous Chinese detective, Wan Lo Pan, to watch and report any activities that might develop. A few days later, he received this report. "Honorable Sir, you leave house. I watch the house. He comes to the house I watch. He and she leave house. I follow. He and she get on train. I follow. He and she get off train. I follow. He and she go in hotel. I climb tree, look in window. He kiss she kiss he. He strip she strip he. He play with she play with he. I play with me. Fall out of tree. No see. No fee." The husband comes home and worried because he has a scratch on his chest caused by a fingernail from his mistress. Opens the door, sees the cat asleep on the couch, and gives him a tremendous kick. The cat screams a loud meow and runs out the door. The wife comes in the living room and asks what happened, and he angrily replies, "This cat seems crazy. I was walking in, and just like that, he jumped on me and scratched me in the chest." "Look at that of a scratch." The woman replied, "You did very well. Today this fool has bitten my and given me one of a hickey on my neck." I was swiping through a dating app and matched with someone who didn't have a profile picture. Desperate for a change, I decided to take a chance and meet her. I wasn't expecting much, maybe someone a little rough around the edges, but when I arrived, I was floored. She was stunning. 5 feet 2 inches, baby blue eyes, strawberry blonde hair, and all the right curves. Impressed, I asked what she did for a living. "I teach Sunday school," she said. I'd never dated a Christian girl before, but I was intrigued. On the drive to dinner, I lit a cigarette and asked if she cared for one. "Oh, heavens, no," she replied. "What would I tell my Sunday school children?" Fair enough, I thought. Some people smoke, some don't. At the restaurant, I ordered steak, she got lobster, and I requested the second most expensive bottle of wine on the menu. When the wine arrived, she declined a glass. "You don't drink?" I asked, surprised. She shook her head. Oh, heavens no! What would I tell my Sunday school children? The dinner and conversation were amazing, but I couldn't quite figure her out. On the drive home, I passed a cheap motel and figured, why not take a chance? Want to get a room and fool around? I asked nervously. She winked and said, I thought you'd never ask. Surprised, I laughed and teased, really? What are you going to tell your Sunday school children about this? She grinned mischievously and said, the same thing I tell them every week. You don't have to smoke or drink to have a good time. A married couple is driving along a highway, doing a steady 40 miles per hour. The husband is behind the wheel. His wife suddenly looks across at him and speaks in a clear voice. I know we have been married for over 20 years, but I want a divorce. The husband says nothing. He keeps looking at the road ahead, but slowly increases his speed to 45 miles per hour. The wife speaks again. I don't want you to try to talk me out of it. She says, because I've been having an affair with your best friend, and he is a far better lover than you are. Again the husband stays quiet, but grips the steering wheel more tightly and slowly increases the speed to 55 miles per hour. She pushes her luck. I want a house, she says insistently. Up to 60 miles per hour. I want the car too, she continues. 65 miles per hour. And, she says, I'll have the bank accounts, all the credit cards, and the boat. The car slowly starts veering towards a massive concrete bridge. This makes her nervous, so she asks him, Isn't there anything you want? The husband at last replies in a quiet and controlled voice. No, I've got everything I need, he says. Oh, really? She inquires. So what have you got? Just before they slam into the wall at 65 miles per hour, the husband turns to her and smiles. The airbag. Fred and Mary get married but can't afford a honeymoon, so they go back to Mom and Dad for the night. In the morning, little Johnny gets up and has his breakfast. As he is going out of the door to go to school, he asks his mom if Fred and Mary are up yet. She replies no. Johnny asks, Do you know what I think? His mom replies, Never mind what you think. Just go to school. Johnny comes home for lunch and asks his mom, Is Fred and Mary up yet? She replies, No. Johnny says, Do you know what I think? His mom replies, Never mind what you think. Eat your lunch and go back to school. After school, he comes home and asks, Is Fred and Mary up yet? His mom says, No. Johnny asks, Do you know what I think? His mom replies, Okay, what do you think? He says, Well, last night Fred came in my room for some Vaseline, and I think I gave him my airplane glue. Two men, one American and one East Indian, were sitting in a bar drinking shot after shot. The Indian man said to the American, You know my parents are forcing me to get married to this so-called homely girl from a village whom I haven't even met once. We call this arranged marriage. I don't want to marry a woman whom I don't love. I told them that openly, and now have a hell of a lot of family problems. The American said, talking about love marriages, I'll tell you my story. I married a widow whom I deeply loved and dated for 3 years. After a couple of years, my father fell in love with my stepdaughter and married her. So my father became my son-in-law, and I became my father's father-in-law. Legally now, my daughter is my mother and my wife is my grandmother. More problems occurred when I had a son. My son is my father's brother, and so he is my uncle. Situations turned worse when my father had a son. Now my father's son, my brother, is my grandson. Ultimately, I have become my own grandfather, and I am my own grandson. And you think you have family problems? A lady had a height problem. She was too tall, being exactly 2 meters tall. She hated the way she had to duck to walk through a doorway and the way she felt so uncomfortable in a car. So she visited an expert. The expert said, Go visit the dwarven town. It's full of dwarfs. Find any dwarf and ask him if he'll marry you. Every time a dwarf says no, you grow 10 centimeters shorter. The lady did as she was told. She went to the dwarven town and found a dwarf and asked if he would marry her. He refused. She found herself 10 centimeters shorter. She quickly repeated this act another time on another dwarf. Now 180 centimeters tall, she decided to ask one more dwarf and then go home. She boldly walked up to a dwarf and asked if he would marry her. The dwarf replied, "No, no, 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 no. I don't want to marry a tall person like you. You're too tall. No, 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 no." Two Jewish men knock on Rabbi Levi's door. "What can I do for you, gentlemen?" said the rabbi once he opened his door. They explain to him they have an argument and cannot resolve it. The rabbi agrees to help them. "What is the argument about?" he asks. First man, "Black is a color." Second man, "No, it is not." First man, "It is a color." Second man, "Rabbi, is black a color?" "Well, sure," said the confused rabbi. First man, "See, I told you. And so is white." Second man, "White is not a color." First man, "Rabbi? Rabbi, well, yes, white is a color." First man, "See, I told you, Moish, I sold you a color TV." A blonde, looking to make some extra cash, decided to do odd jobs around her rich neighborhood. At the first house, the man says, "You can paint my porch." "How much?" $50, she replies. He agrees, hands her the paint and brushes, and goes back inside. His wife, overhearing, raises an eyebrow. Does she even know the porch wraps around the whole house? He shrugs. She should. She was standing on it. Not long after, the blonde knocks on the door. "All done," she beams, "and I had enough paint left to give it 2 coats." The man, impressed, starts pulling out the cash when she adds with a smile, "Oh, and by the way, it's not a porch. It's a Lexus." A blonde is swimming in a river. A man walks up and asks her, "What are you doing in there?" She says, "I'm washing my clothes." The man asks, "Why don't you use a washing machine?" The blonde says, "I tried that, but I was too dizzy." A blonde was driving down a highway. A blonde was driving on a freeway. And suddenly, a police officer by the side of the road turned on his flashing red lights. The blonde saw the red lights pulled over to the roadside and waited for the cop. When the cop gets there, he says to the blonde, "Lady, you were doing 43 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone." The blonde says, "No, I wasn't. The sign back there said 43. To this, the cop snaps back, "Lady, look. That was a highway number sign. This is Highway 43, and you're doing 43 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone." The blonde repeats her story once again, claiming that she hasn't driven too fast. The cop scratches his head and heads back to his car to ask his bald partner what to do. After telling his bald partner the story, his partner says, "Bill, you'd better give her a ticket. The 401 is just up ahead, and then we'll never catch her." A man arrived home to find his wife sobbing. "What's wrong, darling?" he asked. Through tears, she said, "The pharmacist. He insulted me on the phone this morning." I had to call several times before he even answered. The husband stormed down to the pharmacy, ready to demand an apology. Before he could get more than a word out, the chemist said, "Now hold on. Let me tell you my side of the story. This morning my alarm didn't go off. I woke up late, skipped breakfast, and rushed out the door, only to realize I'd locked both my house and car keys inside. I had to break a window to get them. Then I sped off and got a ticket. 3 streets from the shop, I got a flat tire. When I finally arrived at the shop, customers were already impatiently waiting. I opened up, started serving, and the phone would not stop ringing. Ring, 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 ring. Then I broke open a bag of pound coins for change. They went everywhere. I'm on my hands and knees picking them up, the phone still ringing. I stood up, smashed my head on the cash drawer, staggered back into a shelf of expensive perfume, and half of it shattered on the floor. Still, the phone keeps ringing. I finally answer it. It was your wife. She wanted to know how to use a rectal thermometer. And believe me, mate, As God is my witness, all I did was tell her how to use it. One sunny afternoon, an 82-year-old lady named Mrs. Gertrude Simmons was pulled over by a highway patrol officer for going 70 in a 45-mile-per-hour zone. The young officer approached the car, glanced at the fluffy pink steering wheel cover, the bobblehead cat on the dashboard, and Mrs. Simmons, barely peeking over the wheel in her giant sunglasses and leopard print sun hat. Officer: "Ma'am, do you realize how fast you were going?" Mrs. Simmons: "Well, I had the radio on really loud and the car seemed to be enjoying it. I didn't want to K.1.I.I. the vibe." Officer, smiling slightly: "License and registration, please." Mrs. Simmons fumbled through her enormous purse, pulling out items one by one: a tin of hard candies, knitting needles, a dog leash with no dog, and a laminated church bulletin from 1993. Finally, she handed over her license with a grin that suggested she may or may not fully understand the seriousness of the situation. Officer: "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Mrs. Simmons: "Of course. You young folks are always looking for an excuse to talk to a classy older lady." Officer, trying not to laugh: "No, ma'am, you were speeding." She leaned in, squinted at his badge, and said, "Well, Officer Martinez, I've got a casserole in the oven, a cat stuck in the laundry hamper, and a bingo game starting in 20 minutes. Unless you want a riot at the senior center, I suggest we wrap this up." The officer was completely thrown off. "Okay, but speeding is still—" Mrs. Simmons interrupted. "Now listen, Sonny. I've been driving since Elvis was skinny, and if I made it through the 70s without a seatbelt and with a map the size of a tablecloth, I think I can handle a little extra speed on a sunny Tuesday." Before the officer could respond, she added, "Besides, I was being tailgated by some maniac on a scooter. I think he was trying to race me." Officer: "Ma'am, that was a kid on a tricycle." She gasped. "He's got a future in NASCAR, I'll tell you that." After a long pause, the officer finally chuckled, gave her a warning, and told her to slow down. As he walked back to his car, Mrs. Simmons rolled down her window and shouted, "Hey, you single? My granddaughter's a nurse, great cook, and only slightly more sarcastic than me." He laughed and waved her on, and Mrs. Simmons drove off into the sunset at exactly 45 miles per hour. Mostly. An Irishman walks into the confessional at St. Patrick's Catholic Church. "Father, it's been a month since my last confession. I had relations with Fanny Green twice last month." The priest sighs but nods. "You are forgiven, my son. Say 3 Hail Marys and sin no more." A short while later, another Irishman enters the confessional. "Father, it's been 2 months since my last confession. I've had relations with Fanny Green twice a week for the past 2 months." The priest furrows his brow. "Who is this Fanny Green?" "A new woman in the neighborhood, Father," the man replies. The priest sighs again. "Very well. Say 10 Hail Marys and try to mend your ways." The next morning, as the priest prepares to deliver his sermon, a tall, drop-dead, gorgeous redhead walks into the church. Every man in the congregation watches as she struts up the aisle, her emerald green dress hugging every curve. Her legs shimmer in the light, and her matching green high heels click against the floor as she sits right in front of the priest. As she crosses her legs, the priest and the altar boy both realize, with wide eyes, that she isn't wearing any underwear. The priest, struggling to keep his composure, leans over to the altar boy and whispers, "Tell me, Johnny, is that Fanny Green?" Little Johnny, bug-eyed and barely able to breathe, whispers back, "No, Father. I think it's just a reflection from her shoes."